Are you watching Bucchigiri though? Unfortunately, in past tense. With a new rise in delinquent anime in recent years, particularly Tokyo Revengers, particularly having a strong female readership, acclaimed director Hiroko Utsumi getting in on the trend was inevitable given her brand. And Bucchigiri was just that, getting in on the trend and nothing more. Maybe even something less. So in this video today, we're gonna, let's say, critique Bucchigiri, touch on Utsumi's background as well as look at some of her other more notable works, and ultimately just highlight why this anime was so cumulatively disappointing, particularly within the context of the season that it aired in. Of course, this video, like always, will be available on my Patreon and for channel members for anyone who wants to see the extended cut that's uncensored. Segment times below, spoiler warnings as we go. Now, first of all, you may be asking... Bucchigiri is an anime about a boy named not Aladdin, but Arajin, who wants to be cool in high school, who gets reunited with his childhood friend Matakata, which ultimately ruins his plans because as friends they wanted to be hunky people, and he finds that now in this teenage age to be cringe. One day after being chased by gang members, Arajin ends up at a shrine where he accidentally awakens. And when asked what he wishes for, Arajin says a wish that he never lets us forget. What ensues is gang battles between barely characterized OCs as Matakata tries to befriend his Osanana genie, who is too busy to do anything other than simp for a girl who doesn't like him. And more genies and body takeovers and homoerotic undertones throughout, yada yada. Now speaking about that last part... Hiroko Utsumi was initially an animator at Kyoto Animation. Her first documented work was Full Metal Panic Season 2, way back in I think 2009. She's worked on countless series from them, most notably K-On! And her first credit as a director was the Kyoto Animation commercial Suie-Hen, which later spun out into Free Iwatobi Swim Club and Free Eternal Summer, two anime adaptations loosely based off of the high-speed novel which won a Kyoto Animation Award back in 2011. She was responsible for the Modern Banana Fish adaptation at Studio MAPPA, and her first original work was Sk8-ing Infinity at Studio Bones in 2021. She also most notably worked on Boku no Hero Academia's second season's second ED, the one that featured all the fantasy outfits from the character poll. Now, I obviously do not live in Japan, so I cannot speak for Japanese fans, but at least in English-speaking fandom, Utsumi has gained somewhat of a loyal following over the years. I've seen people say that they left Free after she left after Eternal Summer. A lot of people praise not only her updated take on Banana Fish, but also introducing them to Banana Fish at all. And of course, they shriek to the heavens about how she made Renga canon. So cumulatively, going off of those examples, what is it exactly that Hiroko Utsumi is known for? You guessed it, FujoBait. Now, FujoBait as a term is obviously short for Fujoshi Bait, and it's usually used as a descriptor to describe anime that people believe is intentionally framed to pander to Fujoshi audiences, usually used with a negative connotation. Synonyms include Yaoi Bait, BL Bait, and most notably, notoriously, and I quote, "Is this shonen ai?" Overall, the term Fujoshi Bait and its context and what it applies to is a subject of debate, unfortunately. But overall, cumulatively, it is usually typically on the internet used negatively by homophobes, both external and internal. So Bucchigiri, of course, also very much fell under the umbrella of FujoBait. Now, Utsumi's brand up until now had been rock solid, flawless, like unquestionable. If people knew Utsumi was attached to it, they already knew to them it was going to be a hit. Now, when it comes to critiquing Bucchigiri, I'm not gonna nitpick every little thing, because honestly, we would be here all day. I know y'all like to watch 4-hour video essays on YouTube. This is not that kind of channel. Also, it's just unnecessary to completely nitpick it like that. I'm not a hater. I'm kind of a hater, but I'm not a hater. Like, that's just unnecessary, and that's not ultimately the point that I'm trying to get to with talking about Bucchigiri in this video. So I'm just gonna kind of highlight the choices that I found to be odd, undesirable, and ultimately lazy, which is kind of the through line of ultimately how I felt about this anime. Cumulatively, it just feels like Bucchigiri as an anime lacks the effort that Utsumi is known for, but also that she thinks that the audience is stupid and will settle for anything. Which honestly is partially the audience's fault, but maybe we'll get to that later. Or maybe in a different video. Actually, maybe I'll finally use that iconic Bakugo thumbnail. Well, TBD. Maybe for pride. Like I said, Utsumi's brand is about on-the-nose, cheeky, tongue-in-cheek, like very obvious, but still very filling at the same time. But overall here, it just feels very lazy in the execution, and it lacks the characterization to complement this very like on-the-nose, very cheeky like humor and references that she usually includes. I can't really use Banana Fish as an example because it's an adaptation of a manga, but when we talk about Free, like Free had the whole trope of every time Haru in the first 2 seasons sees water, he starts taking his clothes off. Very obvious, very panders to the audience. And on top of it all, we have the beach scene when Haru is about to give Mako CPR. Utsumi knows what she's doing, and it's working, and it's fulfilling, because we know what is happening, but at the same time, we're on the edge of our seats. It's done in a way where there's like a subtlety of like, oh, it's not gonna happen. We know it's not gonna, is it gonna happen? You know what I'm saying? There's like a suspense to it. Same with Sk8. We had the whole Reki in the Love Hotel. And of course, Adam every time he's on a skateboard, and every time he has an interaction with either pretty much everyone he skates against. And again, just here in Bucchigiri, it felt like she was not doing anything interesting with it. So obvious that it's like, we know it's not gonna happen, but the intent and the execution here is like, you're not even trying. Now, continuing on talking about her previous works, it felt like it pulled from a lot of her previous works, but in really uninteresting and really boring and like not transformative ways. First and foremost, Matakata and Arajin are basically the Mako Haru dynamic, also low-key the Mako Haru aesthetic. We have Matakata, who is not only Ball of Sunshine, who's the childhood friend of Arajin, but he also has Mako's back muscles, which I've highlighted in a previous video. But Arajin, on the other hand, not only has black hair, but is also a loner, is antisocial, and has a, let's say, quirky hyperfixation. Ota's character design literally looks like a gang AU version of Sosuke that you would find on Pixiv. On top of that, Ota and Marito's backstory very much was giving so Rin. I would say Marito is very much not at all anything close to Rin, but Ota, personality-wise, is very, very, very identical to Sosuke on top of the character appearance, particularly in his attachment and his following of Marito. Zabu and Sakigaki felt Nagire adjacent, so did Jabashira and Hagare to a degree, even though aesthetically not so much. Senya and Ichiya, aesthetically, color-wise, are kind of a match for Renga, while at the same time having character designs and personalities somewhat similar to Cherry and Joe. I'm someone who enjoys a reference if someone is referencing their former works, whether it be a mangaka or a director or whatever, but none of these feel like true references because they're not on the nose enough to be like an obvious reference, and overall they just lack any sort of ambition to be any sort of evolution of what she's done before. And again, overall it feels like nothing is new or inventive. Moving on, Arajin as a character overall sucks. With how much of a little she is, you thought this should have been called Bucchigiri. The wish joke out the gate told me that she ultimately thinks that the audience is stupid. I immediately saw people being like, oh, he wants to lose his but he didn't say to who, and it's Hiroko Utsumi, LOL. Fuck out of here. Also, when he uses his genie powers that are powered by that wish, only his right arm gets muscular. What are we, 5? And the worst part about the whole thing is that it ultimately amounted to nothing. Now, when I say it ultimately came to nothing, did I expect A, that Matakata was gonna some guy on screen? No. No. Did I expect that he was gonna some girl on screen? No. But there are still countless possibilities that could have been a plot twist for that stupid wish. One, he could have someone off screen. It could have been Mohoro, it could have been someone else. Either way, he had the wish is fulfilled, and it's like, okay, they are who we thought they were. Second possibility, Arajin sits on a broomstick or something. Have it be some twist where the wish isn't actually actualized in like the actual way, but have it be some sort of accident where it counts as losing his Thirdly, and adding on to the twist of the wish, is that early on, this anime seemed to be setting up this idea of wordplay in it, particularly when it came to Senya introducing himself. He was talking about the Honki people, but he also mentioned that Honki as a word is spelled the same way as Majin, Majin of course being genie, from what I understand, or Jin, from what I understand. For those that don't know, the context in the word that Arajin was using to describe himself in terms of wanting to lose his was dote, which I believe means male virgin in Japanese. So my impression was that, okay, there's going to be some sort of twist on the idea of losing your where either the word virginity is going to be something else, or it's going to be some other alternate definition of a word that is spelled like dote in Japanese, similar to Honki and Majin. So I think I looked it up and it was like none was the only thing I could really find, and I was like, the mother was watching basically that anime festa with the monk that had a nun in it for some reason. So I was like, okay, maybe this is what it's all leading to. But ultimately, in the end, nothing came of the wish. And not only did nothing come of the wish, but we had to deal with Arajin screaming about his wish and harassing Mahoro for like, what, 11, 10 episodes? I forget when he like had Senya leave him, but that's what I'm getting to, is Senya left his body at some point. So when he nulled the contract essentially with the genie, the wish was essentially no more. However, he lost the wish, Senya was no longer with him, and then he reintegrates with Senya and gets a new wish. A new, completely different wish. The wish being changed, or the wish being no more, ultimately being a thing, something within the realm of possibility. Then when he's fighting Matakata in the final battle, don't know why I said it like that. In his, like, mindscape, in his dive to heart, if you will, Arajin brings back up the wish again. And then in the end, Senya leaves him. And then the anime ends. And literally nothing came of this wish in any way, shape, or form, so why do we have to suffer through it? Like, there's pandering and appealing to an audience, and then there's telling them,
you are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
I can't even consider it bait. Like, when we talk about FujoBait, Yaoi-bait, Yuri-bait, you have to understand, like, in the context, what is bait? Bait is not the same thing as a trap. Bait can be used within a trap, but bait is not the same thing as a trap. And bait, let's use a metaphor. Let's use a fishing metaphor. So if you're a fish, right, and you're swimming around doing your fishy things, like if you're, and you see a worm dangling up that's attached to a hook, you go and you eat that worm and then you become someone's dinner. At the end of it all, you still got a worm. And that's what bait is. A trap is like you're a whale and you're swimming in the ocean and then a boat's in your way. So you swim away from the boat. And then there's another boat and so you swim away from that boat. And now you're going directly in this one direction because it's this one thing that you think you want to do, which is get away from the boat. But then ultimately, all of a sudden you get harpooned. That's a trap. Because the boats led you to this path so they could trap you and kill you and do illegal things to whales. That is what a trap is, and that is what Bucchigiri did. Thought it was gonna be something that we would have wanted, and ultimately we got nothing. It didn't even get a worm in the end. You know what I'm saying? Hope that metaphor made sense. The only thing more annoying than the joke, however, was the stupid cat club section. Every episode, the teacher character, who's kind of cute, quite honestly, would visit this cat club and rush in after being indecisive about entering it. Then he would meet with the host. The host would lead him to what we didn't know. Is it a cat? It's a cat nightclub, or is it a host? And we had to deal with this thing, this stupid segment in the middle of every episode for 12 episodes. And I really, honestly, by episode 4 was like, this better pay off. It better be one of two options. One, I was like, this better turn out to be a host club. Or two, he better hit all connotations. And ultimately, in the end, it was a cat club. And that was it. And it had no correlation or connection to the rest of the story. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't fun. The cat host was kind of cute. The teacher was kind of cute. I kind of wish that they were the host guy was in cat ears the whole time. Moving on, the mother had a bit of what I thought to be a forced approach in terms of like basically shipping her son with other boys. Like when she specifically said, oh my god, angst, Utsumi really is not trying, thinks will settle for everything. Who says, oh my god, angst? A child. That's the who. When Ota and Jamashita and Hagure come to the shop and they're like, we need to find Arajin, and she's like, no, you got he's out there. You have to let him become a man. Don't interrupt him. And they're like, they think she's talking about Arajin fighting Matakata, and she's in her mind is talking about her son having. I love that kind of miscommunication, and the execution of that I feel like was the only time that Utsumi's like trademark brand was present in like a meaningful way within the story. You're trying. You're finally trying. In the last episode, I'm not gonna tiptoe around the point. The mother, in essence, in this story is a Fujoshi character. And Fujoshi depictions in anime can be a spectrum ranging from hilariously, iconically relatable to like, oh, you really just think women are weird and you hate them. And overall, the mother I found to just be coming off a bit much, to honestly, in her execution, come off to be a bit amateur. Which, again, coming from Hiroko Utsumi, is very, very strange. This is the first Fujoshi character that Hiroko Utsumi has ever done in an anime of hers. Which again, when we're talking about Hiroko Utsumi, and we're talking about Hiroko Utsumi's brand, and what she's known for, and clearly what she's probably, I would have to assume, into, unless this whole thing is a grift, and we just don't know and we'll never know. How is she bad at depicting herself? Obviously, I'm not saying the mother is Hiroko Utsumi, but how can you be a Fujoshi and not be good at depicting like not create an interesting, relatable Fujoshi character? Like just screaming over a boy just because a boy's in the same room as him, and then like, kya, angst. Utsumi really, Really, Utsumi? Are you sure? Are you sure? And it just made me think, like, is Utsumi maybe this new rise of Fujoshi that I call ironic Fujoshi? People who are anti-Fujo, but continue to read BL, who usually are not gay men, but I would also include the misogynist anti-Fujo gay men within the spectrum of the ironic Fujoshi, who are very performative about the type of BL that they enjoy, that complain that BL is fetishistic because it's written by women. Meanwhile, all the BL that they consume is, first of all, BL, also written by women, Sasaki Tomiyano, Given, Banana Fish as an adjacent. I don't like that hardcore stick, abusive yaoi. I only like the good, proper representation. Please, I swear, I'm not like these other Fujoshi. Again, this is like just kind of speculation, but it's like, is Hiroko Utsumi either lacking self-awareness that she wouldn't know how to portray like a really interesting Fujoshi character? Because plenty of like straight men have, in my opinion, made incredibly interesting, likable, and relatable Fujoshi characters over the years. So it's weird that like Hiroko Utsumi, someone who's known for appealing to Fujoshi with her anime, would be so bad at doing it. Is it a lack of awareness? Or again, is it coming down to her just not trying? Also, just a sidebar, shout out to my favorite Fujoshi in all of anime of all time, Tamako Arai from Barakamon. If you just watch it for the Tamako scenes, she so badly wants to be an auntie, but girl, give up, it's not working. Come over to the dark side. Aside from like Arajin and Matakata and like maybe Shindo, barely anybody else gets any meaningful characterization. They get tidbits here and there, but everybody else is kind of like trope archetypal characters that you just kind of can assume how they are and why they are just because of how they behave themselves. Meanwhile, they have a lot of the same interactions with the same people at the same time throughout the entire story. And like Utsumi has done filled casts before, like in Sk8 The Infinity, she has 8 main characters. 8 lead characters is a lot of characters to have as a main core cast to get fleshed out, and she did it incredibly well in Sk8. Meanwhile, this has, let me read the list, Arajin, Matakata, Marito, Ota, Jabashira, Zabu, Doman, Hagure, Mahoro, Komao, and Shindo. And again, besides like Arajin and Matakata, and then like Shindo to a degree before Shindo is basically just put as like a gag side character for the rest of the anime, everyone else just feels like a throwaway OC, honestly, which harms me personally because Jabashira was my favorite. And like, even when it came to like Jabashira specifically, I'm thinking of the moments with like him and Hagure is like, we never got any backstory on the two of them. So how could we care about either of them if when they have these like emotional moments when we don't know the backstory other than the fact that they are like friends and they're always next to each other? Like, where is the elaboration on that? Also, we don't really know how Ota and Marito came to know each other. Ota has always just been with Marito. Like, there's no exploration there. It's just showing the timeline that has always been like how it is. What's interesting about this is that it feels like jumping the gun between Free Iwatobi Swim Club and Free Eternal Summer to a degree. There was the ability to have a gradual characterization where you could introduce Sosuke, but you already know everybody else in the cast, so like you can have more episodes and more time dedicated to Sosuke and Rin because we already had everybody else get, for the most part, mostly backstoried and characterized within the first season. At Samizuka, there are, I forget their names, but they're my actual favorites. Samizuka, Uozumi, and the others. He's the only one that matters to me the most. That Samizuka group was probably about as characterized as most characters in this story were over the course of the story. It's like they had the same Samizuka group and they just expanded them here. Fascinating. But also, like, again, why would you have this many named characters in a cast for a first season if you're not going to actually explore them? It's totally possible to have someone was in the background first in season 1 in the gang, all of a sudden they come to the forefront in a potential season 2. But here it just felt like too much all at the same time. Everybody, for the most part, just felt like, okay, we wanted to get these character designs out. Oh, this one's the angry one, fill in the blanks. Which again, comes back to the laziness and thinking the audience is stupid and will settle for nothing. Alright, actual last thing, the only thing more offensive than the fact that there was a recap episode is probably that in a Hiroko Utsumi anime, my #1 ship was het. And the thing that just cumulatively annoys me the most about this is that Bucchigiri, particularly from English-speaking fans, got so much attention this past season when there were so many alternative options with infinitely better execution, giving what Bucchigiri should have gave. Most notably, honestly, it's Fairy Ranmaru all over again, but this time it's fused with Samurai Flamenco. Do y'all remember those wedding cards? I've already outlined how I was a prophet for Yukibako Hatsubang Braver before in a previous video, but I'll say it again, I have never been so right off of absolutely nothing in my entire life.
Relax your mind, take your time on me.
Bang Bravern is about a hot man named Isami and a hot man named Lewis Smith who are both part of their respective countries' militaries who participate in a joint military mecha training. When Earth is suddenly attacked by aliens, a Megazord named Bravern shows up, asks Isami to come inside him, and it's homoerotic history from there. I really do not want to spoil too much about Bang Bravern because it is best to be experienced raw. It's hilarious, it's emotional, it's mind-f***ing, and with some of the best nipped bodies in anime history. Long-time subscribers know that I have talked about anime nipples for years. For years! So let me say this. Scientifically, the nipples that we see in most anime are not actually nipples. Again, this is most anime, not all. When we say anime nipples, on men, particularly MPNs, male-presenting nipples, what we actually see is actually areola. What makes up the nipple is that the skin around is the areola, and the part that pokes out is the nipple. Most anime men nipples, particularly, most, again, not all, are just areola. Really, the only times you actually see nipples attached to areola is particularly in BL and or hentai. But do you see this nipple? This three-dimensional nipple in an in-between frame? They did not have to draw that, but they did! The anime honestly speaks for itself. It's giving what Bucchigiri should have gave 10,000%, but with the care, nuance, passion, and nipples that Bucchigiri wishes it had in excess. Bucchigiri's nipples were like only on the genies. Why do only genies get nipples? Let me move on. And even beyond Bravern, there was no shortage of Bucchigiri alternatives. Besides the Finn and Chris of it all, High Card Season 2 gave us one of the most passionate, middle-aged, forbidden romance scenarios I dare say I'd ever seen. When we talk about Yaoi-Danmei, and we will talk about Yaoi-Danmei, brace yourselves. Firefighter Daigo is at the top of the list, as it very well should be. Shun and Daigo is the rivalry turned reliability, and you can't spell reliable without BL. They deeply care for each other, they're constantly blushing at each other, they're shaking and crying right now at each other all the damn time. There was even a jealousy mini arc where some other hot guy voiced by Yuichi Nakamura caught Daigo's attention and Shun began to pout over it. And even beyond this new Daigo, we had old Daigo and Amakasa. More same-sex senior citizens! Bickering like a married couple in a meeting in front of another's fellow senior citizen before inviting him to the 30-plus threesome. I would say that Bucchigiri does about as much appealing in subtext as a Weekly Shonen Jump anime does. And aside from Bleach the High School Warfare, this was a season when Smashle was airing, which not only had more explicit queer representation than Bucchigiri had in its entire Bucci, but boys we actually know and care about who also punch each other in the face. Now I know incel shipping is the new gay shipping wave, so let's tap into the incel's favorite delusional self-insert, Classroom of the Elite. Ayano Kuchi, aside from being a prime boy wife in an anime that basically plays out like a bisexual visual novel, if you want a ship where half is adorable and half is a piece of shit, shipping Ayano Koji with Ryuen is infinitely more rewarding. Just watch how he f***ed him up in season 2. Is that not love? And that culminating was ultimately after Ayano Koji roleplayed Toa with Hirata.
次から次にどうして僕に構うのかな ネガティブ
A Sign of Affection, aka Yubisaki to Renren, was so full of BL appropriation that it was offensive in its own way, but it overall was very much not only giving Shojo Romantica, but an unattainable Akihiko in Misaki College AU. And lastly, Shaman King Flowers was so under the radar it couldn't even get licensed, but still was about BL as most BL that's been released within the past year. So Bucchigiri overall was a bust, but not in the ways that we hoped. But at the same time, I'm not a child and or a Gen Urobuchi stan, so I don't expect a director who's made one, maybe two, maybe even three things in a row that I really like to hit it out of the park every single time and to expect every single series that they make to appeal specifically to me, and then be periodically disappointed every time it doesn't subsequently after that. But I will say that cumulatively, I think watching Bucchigiri and then kind of looking back at her other series kind of made me realize that I definitely cumulatively probably have never liked Bucchigiri. Ain't that the truth? But in retrospect, I do feel like this really highlighted the fact that I think cumulatively I never loved Utsumi and what she brought to series as much as I thought I did. Free is one of my favorite things of all time, absolutely, unconditionally. Very much thoroughly enjoyed Iwatobi Swim Club and Eternal Summer, but my love for Free was really elevated and catapulted into the cumulative love that I have for it now, specifically because of the high-speed movie and Dive to the Future, neither of which Utsumi was involved in. And you can chalk that up to my Asahi and Natsuya bias, but Haru is my second favorite character of all time. But at the same time, Free is also not Utsumi's creation. She loosely adapted these characters in this story off of a novel that was not written by her. So it makes sense to me that I still cumulatively enjoyed the series after she was gone, because it really highlights that everything I loved about the series was not necessarily because of her. I don't have much to say about Sk8 The Infinity, which is how it's pronounced in Japan. I don't care if you grew up with Avril Lavigne.
Sk8 Blu-ray and DVD 第1巻
Sk8 was fun, I enjoyed it, but it also is not one of my favorite things ever. Now this is the part of the video where I completely lose you. I really honestly in this next part wish that I was trolling, so I just want to let everybody know, get your inflammatory fingers ready right now. Stretch your ligaments. So a little bit of my backstory with Banana Fish. I watched Banana Fish as it aired from the beginning. The entire reason I watched it was because of that Survive Said the Prophet OP being in the trailer. And I very much enjoyed Banana Fish cumulatively over the course of its airing. And eventually at one point I did try to rewatch it. I only got about like 12 episodes in and realized that it's an anime that for me personally, it's one of those things that like you really enjoy it the first time and you really only need to consume it once. So I never thought that I would ever revisit Banana Fish ever again until someone brought to my attention that Eiji is smoking hot in the manga. So I had planned to read the entirety of the Banana Fish manga for this video. Spoiler alert, that did not happen. But I will at least share my highlights of what reading the first volume of Banana Fish was like. So immediately I was already pissed because Eiji looked so on the manga's first volume cover, hashtag the Eiji we deserved. But not only that, as I was reading it, everyone looked infinitely hotter. And when I say everyone, also Ash was like, really Mask? It was very strange to see. And you may be thinking, okay, everybody's hot. That sounds like a good thing. Keep going, do it for the dick. But it's only a good thing in theory, and only a good thing in theory for myself. Because I not only found myself attracted to Arthur, but also, because I not only found myself attracted to Arthur, but also,
Papá Dios me dijo que la calle mucha maldad. Están esperando que me quite el chaleco.
Listen, in the anime, the way they drew him, he was Dino. But in the manga, he's Papa. If I kept going, y'all would behead me. Cause who knows what I would be saying by the time we get to that silver fox with 2 X's. So yeah, wrapping up this video. I wasn't gonna watch Bucchigiri initially, to be completely honest. I just wasn't into the overall vibe that it was giving from initial trailers and press releases and such. So I would just say that my preconceived notions about Bucchigiri ultimately proved to be true. Which is hilarious when you think about the fact that my preconceived notions about Bang Braven were not only spot on, but like underscored how spot on they were. Ultimately, Bucchigiri has ended. It ended in a fairly, I would say, open-ended way. I do believe that there is possibility for a season 2. Part of me wonders, like, if the perceived reluctance, again, this is all theory, this is speculation, this is not concrete fact, but my perception of this feeling like very lazy and very like, let's get it done overall as an anime has me wondering if like, maybe this was an anime that she was contracted to make, like maybe when she signed on to do Banana Fish, she had to do another anime after Banana Fish, and this is ultimately what she decided to do to maybe move on from whatever this potential contract was. It's kind of like how Charlie XCX, her last album was like a very mainstream pop album, very like off from what she usually does, and apparently that was because she just needed to make one more album to get out of her album contract, and now she's like very much giving Homura from Kyubei's point of view during Madoka season 1 running through airports and shit. I don't know, maybe that's what's going on, maybe that isn't what went on, we'll probably never know. Do I ultimately hate her? Do I think she sucks? Do I want to burn her at the stake? No, she's fine. She's a director. Not everyone is gonna make everything you like for you all the time, and I think that's fine. I don't think a director has to be beholden to like a specific audience every single time they do something. They should be allowed to be creative and do all the different creative things they want to do. To end on a little more positive note, my highlights from the series were very much Jabashira and Ota, and Shindo to a degree in the ending stages of it. He became hilarious. Also very much loved Mahoro. But other than that, like, I could have lived without watching Bucchigiri this past season. Again, I have to get through so much Naruto. But let me know, what were your ultimate thoughts on Bucchigiri? Do you have completely contrarian opinions to that? to it, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what your favorite Utsumi work is. I'm actually very curious about that. I feel like y'all are gonna say Sk8. Other than that, if you want to see more opinions that were too hot for YouTube, head over to my Patreon or click the join button below to become a channel member, and you can see the extended version of this video with additional segments. My next video, I believe, is going to be the Yaoi-Danmei iceberg, which I know some of y'all are like, what in the Yaoi-Danmei? Oh, I'm gonna tell ya. Or will I? Bye!